For generations, the gates of Kensington Palace have stood as more than iron and stone. They have symbolized continuity in a changing world, composure under scrutiny, and an institution shaped by ritual, symbolism, and deliberate restraint. Behind those gates, entire chapters of private history have unfolded beyond public view, moments of tension absorbed quietly, crises managed with strategic precision, uncertainty contained before it could ripple outward. The monarchy has endured not only because of lineage or tradition, but because of its disciplined stewardship of image. Stability in this context is not a coincidence. It is constructed, it is protected, it is curated with intention. Yet even the most carefully maintained institutions are not immune to questions that arise gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. In recent years, a quieter inquiry has begun to surface, not explosive enough to dominate headlines, yet steady enough that it refuses to disappear. It is not about constitutional debates, nor financial controversies, nor even internal family dynamics. Instead, it circles something far more delicate and universally human, a child growing up in one of the most scrutinized environments on Earth, and more specifically, whether the immense expectations attached to that role harmonize with the private emotional landscape of the child himself. Prince Louis, the youngest son of Prince William and Princess Catherine, has frequently been characterized as the spirited one, the lively presence whose candid expressions during public ceremonies captured the imagination of millions. His appearances during the Platinum Jubilee in particular became instantly iconic. The imagery was unmistakable, small hands pressed tightly over ears as aircraft thundered overhead, exaggerated facial expressions that seemed to defy decorum, restless bursts of movement punctuated by sudden stillness, fleeting gestures that read as playful resistance. The world responded warmly, social media amplified the clips, commentators celebrated his authenticity. In a sea of formal pageantry, he appeared refreshingly unscripted. But context alters perception. When the laughter fades, when the music and captions are stripped away, when the viral framing is removed, the same footage invites a more contemplative gaze. Without the cushioning effect of humor, the images feel different, more vulnerable, less comedic. What if those gestures were not acts of theatrical mischief but reflexive responses? What if the hands covering his ears were less about defiance and more about sensory protection? What if the exaggerated faces were attempts at self-regulation in a setting of overwhelming stimuli? What if the sudden shifts between animated movement and blank stillness reflected a nervous system navigating intensity beyond its comfort? Such questions do not constitute accusation, nor do they imply diagnosis. It is essential to emphasize that no confirmed medical information exists in the public domain, and a child's private health remains rightfully private. The purpose of examining these moments is not to declare certainty but to explore interpretation. The same event viewed through different lenses can tell entirely different stories. Through one lens, the child appears mischievous and charming. Through another, he may appear overstimulated in an environment designed for ceremony rather than childhood. To imagine the experience fully, one must consider the setting itself. Vast crowds gathered in unison, the roar of jet engines splitting the sky, military precision unfolding in choreographed grandeur, camera shutters clicking in relentless rhythm, thousands upon thousands of eyes trained upon a single small figure standing on a balcony that has witnessed centuries of history. For adults, such spectacle can be electrifying. For a child, especially one still developing emotionally and neurologically, it can be disorienting. The line between celebration and overload is thinner than it appears. This shift in interpretation does not require certainty about private matters, it simply requires empathy. It invites us to recognize that children in highly symbolic roles inhabit a tension unfamiliar to most of us. Their faces carry not just personal emotion but projected meaning. Their smallest gestures are magnified, replayed, interpreted, and archived. A fleeting grimace becomes a meme. A momentary withdrawal becomes a narrative. In that magnification, something essential can be lost. The reality that behind each viral frame is a developing human being navigating stimuli in real time. Ultimately, the emerging question is not whether Prince Louis is spirited or sensitive. Children can be both. The deeper question is how institutions and audiences interpret visible behavior when it disrupts expectation. Do we lean toward humor to neutralize discomfort? Do we celebrate unpredictability as entertainment while overlooking possible strain? Or do we pause long N? Or to consider the complexity beneath the surface? The gates of Kensington Palace still stand firm, symbols of composure and continuity. But beyond their permanence lies a more fragile truth. Childhood does not bend easily to ceremony. And when a child's spontaneous humanity collides with an environment engineered for precision, the result can be read as charming or as something more nuanced. The lens we choose determines the story we see. Consider the environment not as a distant ceremonial backdrop, but as a lived sensory experience unfolding in real time. The sky trembles as military aircraft roar overhead, the sound not merely heard but felt, vibrating through the ribcage, humming against the skin. Crowds swell in synchronized waves of applause and cheers, a living wall of noise rising and falling unpredictably. Camera shutters fire in relentless bursts, sharp mechanical clicks slicing through the air like a constant staccato drumbeat. Every movement is magnified, every expression captured, frozen, replayed. Thousands of eyes remain fixed on a single small figure, a child standing at the intersection of history and spectacle. For an adult, such intensity can feel electrifying, a rush of adrenaline that heightens awareness and sharpens posture. Adults, however, possess years of neurological development that allow them to contextualize chaos, to filter stimulus, to regulate internal reactions even while externally composed. A child does not yet have that same scaffolding. A child's nervous system is still forming, still calibrating what is safe and what is threatening, still learning how to balance sensation and emotion. What looks like grandeur to observers can feel like sensory assault to someone so young. When stimulation surpasses capacity, the body responds instinctively. Children do not analyze, they adapt in the only way they can. Hands rise to cover ears, not as rebellion, but as protection from sound that feels too sharp, too sudden, too loud. The body moves restlessly, seeking discharge from tension building inside muscles and nerves. The eyes avert, searching for a quieter visual field, a place where attention does not press so heavily. Sometimes the child swings between extremes, animated bursts of energy followed by sudden stillness, as though a switch has flipped. These oscillations are not theatrical performances. They are regulatory attempts, the nervous system toggling between activation and shutdown in an effort to survive the intensity. In developmental psychology, such patterns are well documented. Overwhelm does not always look like fear. It can look like laughter that goes too far, movement that becomes exaggerated, expressions that appear larger than life. It can also look like withdrawal, a brief absence behind the eyes, a pause in responsiveness as the brain reallocates resources away from social engagement and toward internal stabilization. To the untrained eye, these reactions may seem playful, dramatic, or defiant. To those who study child development, they can signal that the environment is exceeding the child's threshold. Public ceremonies amplify these dynamics because they are meticulously structured. Observers often notice the choreography surrounding royal appearances, a gentle hand resting on a small shoulder, a quiet whisper delivered just out of range of microphones, a careful repositioning of posture, a subtle nudge to wave, a reminder to smile at precisely the right second. From one perspective, this is simply attentive caregiving in a demanding setting, parents guiding a child through a complex moment. And indeed, it often is. Yet in institutions where image carries symbolic and even constitutional weight, every gesture serves multiple purposes. A steady wave reassures a nation, a composed expression reinforces continuity, a photograph becomes part of an archive that will outlive the participants. In such an atmosphere, guidance can carry an added layer of urgency. It must not only soothe the child, it must preserve the tableau. This is where the distinction between comfort and control becomes delicate. Comfort is relational. It bends toward the child's inner state, adjusting expectations to protect emotional stability. Control is structural. It bends the child toward the environment, ensuring that the scene remains intact. In many real-world situations, these impulses coexist, overlapping and entangled. The challenge lies in which one leads when tension rises. As public discourse evolved, speculation grew that professional insight may have been sought behind closed doors at various times. These discussions remain unverified and should not be treated as established fact. However, the very notion that expert observation could be necessary reflects a deeper unease among observers. Professionals who work with children in high-visibility settings are trained to evaluate not isolated incidents but patterns across contexts. They look for contrast. Does the child demonstrate ease and flexibility in calm, predictable environments? Does strain intensify as stimulation and symbolic expectation increase? Often, children who appear unsettled in ceremonial settings reveal a markedly different presence in quieter spaces. Remove the cameras, reduce the noise, soften the lighting, and something shifts. The body relaxes, speech flows more freely, emotional nuance becomes accessible, curiosity surfaces without inhibition, intellectual engagement deepens. The child who seemed restless becomes thoughtful, the one who appeared defiant becomes collaborative. It is not that the child has changed. It is that the nervous system is no longer fighting to regulate itself. Reintroduce the full weight of spectacle, crowds, rehearsal, ritual timing, amplified sound, global attention, and the transition can be abrupt. Muscles stiffen, movement becomes exaggerated or erratic. Processing slows as cognitive energy diverts toward managing stress signals. In such moments, the body speaks before language can catch up. It signals strain in ways that may be misinterpreted as personality traits rather than situational responses. For some children, especially those who are temperamentally sensitive or highly perceptive, the body becomes a primary communicator when emotional expression feels constrained. If the environment does not permit open articulation of fear, fatigue, or confusion, the nervous system finds alternative pathways. Restlessness becomes protest, stillness becomes retreat, humor becomes shield. None of this suggests diagnosis. None of it claims privileged insight into private circumstances. It simply recognizes a universal developmental truth: children are not miniature adults. Their regulatory systems are more porous, their thresholds more variable. When placed within environments engineered for symbolism rather than spontaneity, they may absorb more than they can comfortably process. The broader question, then, is not whether a child waves perfectly or smiles at the correct moment. It is whether the surrounding structure is responsive to his developmental needs. Does the environment flex when strain appears, or does it hold firm, expecting adaptation from the youngest participant in the scene? In spaces where continuity and perception are paramount, the instinct to maintain composure is powerful. Yet genuine stability is not achieved through rigid preservation alone. It requires sensitivity to the humans who embody the institution, especially the smallest ones. Within that context, the emotional gravity of certain reported sentiments, whether precisely quoted or loosely paraphrased in public conversation, carries unusual weight. The image of a child asking why he must smile when he feels afraid resonates because it distills a universal developmental dilemma into a single, piercing question. Childhood is the stage at which authenticity and approval first begin to negotiate with one another. When affirmation is tied to composure, when praise follows performance, the child begins to absorb an unspoken lesson. Some emotions are welcome, others are not. Joy is celebrated, confidence is applauded. Fear, uncertainty, overwhelm, these must be edited before they are allowed into view. Over time, this dynamic can shape identity in subtle but enduring ways. Healthy development depends on congruence, the alignment between what a child feels internally and what he is permitted to express outwardly. When that alignment is supported, a stable sense of self forms. The child learns that his inner experiences are valid, that they can be communicated safely, that they do not threaten belonging. But when congruence is repeatedly interrupted, not through dramatic confrontation but through quiet, consistent redirection, the impact accumulates. The child begins to anticipate reaction before he reveals emotion. He rehearses expressions internally before displaying them externally. He studies himself as though from a distance, asking not "what do I feel," but what is acceptable to show. This form of self-monitoring does not emerge overnight. It develops gradually, almost imperceptibly. Fear becomes something to swallow, confusion becomes something to disguise, discomfort becomes something to manage swiftly so as not to disrupt the broader scene. The stakes may not feel explicit, but they are understood. Visibility depends on composure, approval depends on steadiness, belonging depends on the absence of visible fracture. For a child growing within a symbolic institution, that awareness can arrive earlier and with greater intensity than in most environments. Institutions built upon continuity and tradition often move carefully, deliberately, sometimes slowly. Stability is their foundation, and stability, once questioned, can ripple outward. In such systems, vulnerability may feel not merely personal but structural. A single moment of visible strain can be interpreted as symbolic fragility. It is perhaps unsurprising then whenever conversations intensify, images of warmth and unity frequently follow. Photographs of shared laughter, family walks framed in soft natural light, carefully composed scenes of reassurance. Whether these images arise strategically or organically, they serve a function. They restore equilibrium in the public imagination. They reassure observers that continuity remains intact. Yet reassurance, however soothing, does not dissolve the underlying inquiry. If visible strain emerges in ceremonial environments, the question remains: is the solution to refine the choreography, to perfect the performance, or to reconsider the environment itself? Is the answer greater precision in presentation or greater flexibility in expectation? The difference between those approaches is not cosmetic, it is philosophical. The resonance of this narrative extends far beyond royalty. In competitive schools, children are praised for quiet diligence and redirected when anxiety spills over. In high-performance households, composure becomes a badge of maturity. In public-facing families and demanding institutions of all kinds, children often learn quickly that certain expressions draw applause while others draw correction. What is labeled misbehavior may, in many cases, be unprocessed overload. What is framed as defiance may be dysregulation. What appears chaotic may be a nervous system signaling that it has reached its limit. Children rarely articulate systemic mismatch in policy language. They do not draft position papers or outline structural reform. They communicate through their bodies, through tears, through restlessness, through silence. Their expressions can be messy, inconvenient, and difficult to decode, but they are communication nonetheless. The responsibility falls to adults not merely to quiet the surface behavior, but to examine the structure generating it. Suppression may create temporary order. Adaptation creates genuine stability. The strength of any institution lies not in its capacity to eliminate vulnerability from view, but in its willingness to accommodate it without perceiving it as threat. Systems that endure are not those that resist change at all costs, but those capable of adjusting when human needs demand it. In this sense, the story is not about weakness undermining strength. It is about whether strength can expand to include sensitivity. Prince Louis did not design the framework into which he was born. His role preceded him, shaped by centuries of ritual, symbolism, and expectation. That inheritance confers visibility and privilege, but also weight, symbolic gravity that few adults would navigate without strain. The issue is not whether a child can be both sensitive and strong. History shows repeatedly that sensitivity often deepens strength. The question is whether the system surrounding him recognizes that truth, or whether it treats sensitivity as something to be concealed rather than integrated. Public perception has evolved as well. Where laughter once dominated, curiosity now lingers. Where memes once framed the narrative, analysis has begun to surface. With curiosity comes responsibility. Viral moments are fragments, not wholes. They capture seconds, not context. Behind each replayed clip stands a developing human being with neurological thresholds, emotional boundaries, and a private interior life invisible to spectators. Ultimately, the issue is ethical, not political. When performance and well-being compete, which holds priority? When institutions encounter visible vulnerability, do they respond by tightening control or widening protection? Meaningful change rarely emerges from comfort. It arises from reflection, often uncomfortable, often gradual, but transformative nonetheless. Perhaps the most enduring principle to extract from this conversation transcends titles and tradition altogether. A child's welfare must never become secondary to optics. Not in a palace, not in a classroom, not in a boardroom, not in any setting where image and expectation threaten to eclipse inner reality. Because beyond speculation and symbolism, beyond strategy and spectacle, there remains a simple truth. There is a child growing within extraordinary expectation, and the measure of any institution, ancient or modern, is not how flawlessly it preserves its facade, but how faithfully it safeguards the human beings entrusted to its care.